On this program, we've been speaking quite a bit about the opioid epidemic and how it has devastated families in our area as well as obviously across this country. Well, the latest numbers for the Center for Disease Control show that more than 70,000 people have died from drug overdoses in 2017, and they've only been getting worse instead of better since. In New York State alone, more than 2,000 people have died from opioid overdoses in the same year. Things are also getting worse in the Empire State. A new bill in the state Senate, however, sponsored by Democrat Pete Harckham, it aims to reverse that trend or at least start the process of turning around. The bill says addiction treatment programs would have to contact authorized friends or family of a patient if the provider suspects that that patient has relapsed. That bill has support from families who have lost loved ones, but it's also raising concerns about privacy and confidentiality. Joining me now, people on each side of the issue. Senator Harckham, he joins us, and so is a man who has major concerns. John Coppola, he is Executive Director of the New York Association of Alcoholism and Substance Abuse Providers. Gentlemen, thank you. And you both share the same common goal, which is to help this population, obviously their families attached. Give an idea, the Reader's Digest version, what would happen here, because I understand it, Senator. People go to treatment, but obviously the treatment more often than not doesn't take, and they come home and the family sometimes inherit a situation much worse than they're led to believe, and then sometimes there's fatal consequences.
Sure, thanks. It's great to be here, and it's also great to be with John. I should say John has been a terrific ally as the Senate examines these issues. We work very closely together. What this would do, and also in instances of outpatient treatment too, and you said it correctly, it's an opt-in, so it's not for everyone. There wouldn't be HIPAA concerns, but it's, if someone fails a drug test, for instance, the young man who the law is named after, his family wanted to be involved, and he failed a drug test, and they didn't get a call, and the next day he died of an overdose. And the danger now is that because the heroin is so strong and laced with fentanyl, we don't get second chances. People's tolerance wanes while they're in treatment, and then boom, they take the same dose, their body can't handle it, and they die. So that was our concern. That's been the family's concern, and we're trying to put the families first in this case. So, and we've interviewed people in every stage of this process, and we've also spoken to folks at addiction centers, and they talk about the challenges, particularly with the strain of opioids that are out there right now, and literally the challenges that they're dealing with. That said, what is your concern that if you have to alert a family that you suspect somebody's relapsed, I assume the concern would be there's a breach of trust that's going on there, and that's paramount to you helping this person kick their habit.
Yeah, that's part of it. I think the concern really is to make sure that as we move forward, first of all, the concern is very valid. I think the Senator's leadership on this has really stimulated a lot of, the introduction of his bill has stimulated a lot of discussion and constructive discussion. And the idea here is to try to prevent overdose deaths and to help people who are suffering from addiction. It's very, very difficult to sometimes to step forward and to say, I have an addiction, and my addiction involves, the use of drugs which are illegal, and so the confidentiality guidelines for treatment programs are the strictest of strict for that reason, that people have to feel safe when they come in, and so. The idea of disclosing information to family members, loved ones, et cetera, of course is really important, and I think that's the goal here. So I think our concerns really are more about making sure that it proceeds in a manner that's consistent with confidentiality guidelines and will also be able to be implemented in a way where the counselors and people in programs won't have to make a judgment call on.
I wanted to ask about that if I could. Does the legislation say that this would only be on a drug test failure, or would it be a judgment call that the person looked off or they weren't responsive or whatever else?
It could be a series of missed appointments. One appointment, we all have things to do, but that is a sign possibly of decompensation. But John raises valid points, and what we want to do is we'll work on language with John and his team. We've already worked with providers on language. We can continue to refine it because what we want to do is for the families that want to be involved and patients who want family involvement, and some of them do and some don't, and we respect that. The goal is to work with treatment providers and the families to get everybody at the table. So
legislation would have to have an opt-in on both patient and family? Or would only one party be necessary?
Well, no, it would have to be the patient. It starts with the patient, it ends with the patient.
Okay.
You couldn't have a situation where the family said, we want to know what's going on, and the patient said no.
Now, give me an idea, and obviously I don't want you to violate any confidences, but what is the average stay of a person coming in seeking treatment? And what is the odds of success? I mean, I've heard numbers of it takes 3-4 times on average before someone finally really gets a hold of the habit. What's the reality?
There's so many different variables. Treatment really, I think with opioids, with alcohol, with almost anything, is kind of a lifetime. We're starting to see treatment as part of a process of recovery, and the importance of an investment in healthy behaviors, et cetera, over the course of the rest of the person's lifetime becomes really important. So again, and each time we expect treatment to be tailored to the individual needs of the person.
The rule of thumb, and if I'm wrong, is you folks in the front lines would like to have people for longer than you currently do right now, that the treatment durations aren't really long enough to really get to the habit, and for somebody to kick the habit after the first treatment is the rarity, certainly not the norm.
It sort of depends, but I think the point that you're making about length of treatment is true. The thing that we want to do is to make sure that each person receives the amount of treatment that they need. Some people who with a serious addiction, who've got solid social supports, who live in an environment where there's support for their recovery process, who have a job to go back to, a place to live, et cetera, who've got the kind of social supports, might not need as intensive an experience with their treatment, would have the recovery supports in place that they need. Somebody else lacking that kind of support would need a lot more.
And if I may, to your point, you raise an excellent issue. And working with John and his colleagues in the budget, we extended the stays from 14 days in New York State before prior authorization from the insurance company to 28 days. So we doubled that for both inpatient and outpatient, recognizing that in many cases time is the enemy.
And I think that's terrific. I know a lot of states don't even have that much, but 28 days, right, probably isn't. I know you'd like to do more. It's a first step. But do you get the sense, everybody said the words a couple of years ago, but it seems from the outside that people finally put their arms around that it is an epidemic. It doesn't matter if you live in the city, a rural area, or a suburban area. It doesn't matter what color you are or even age. Mm-hmm. It's everywhere here.
It's
and now
a crisis.
With fentanyl, it's, my God, I don't even know how to describe it, right? Does Albany, do you think they're getting to really make perceptible inroads to deal with this now?
We get it. We absolutely get it. More people are dying now than at the height of the AIDS crisis. I know my committee is working constantly with everybody, with insurance companies, with the providers, with patients, with families, with the medical community. And we passed a host of bills already this year. We'll pass more before the end of the session. And then all through the summer, we're going to have a series of hearings throughout New York State. What are the gaps? What can we do more of? What can we tee up for our next legislative session? So we get it, and it's a team approach with all hands on deck.
I will tell you, I was invited once to sit in where family members got up and they spoke about what they'd gone through, and you have to lift your chin off the floor. I also went to a drug court also where I saw the success stories. Some people that were making it, and they were meeting all the tough deadline, and they were getting their life back in order, and others falling short here. But if you are blessed and haven't had to live through this, count your blessings, because it's amazing and amazingly sad what's going on there. I wish you both the best of luck. Thank you both.
Thank you, Richard.
All right, when we come back, President Trump, he is starting a two-front trade war with two of our biggest trading partners. We're going to discuss the consequences, and trust me, it's going to impact you, the consumer.